Yeah.
Okay, let's get this show on the road here. Okay, first off, my name is Richard Tendick. I'm the vice president of the guild. Our president, Ed, couldn't be here today, so he asked me to fill in for him. So we'll start off with what? Go closer? Can't hear? This is not for here. This is for the Zoom. Okay, so at any rate.
Just speak a little louder.
Okay, I'll try to speak a little louder. First off, we'll do a little bit of business for the guild. We know, we've got a number of our main events coming up in the next few months. So first off, we're going to be having our Woodworkers Expo. Ron, you want to spend a few minutes talking about that?
Okay, the Woodworkers Expo, it's September 24th. It's, I don't know, I think 6 weeks away. This is the last year we'll be at the Bloomington Armory. We have, I would say, twice as many participants at the expo this year. A lot of them are nice tool brands such as Festool and Bosch and JPW and Stanley Black & Decker. They're all going to give little demos. And now we're also going to have a CNC demo by Yeti Tools. It's this portable CNC machine. So we're going to have Hirschfields there, plus a lot of our sponsors, a lot of the lumber yards. So the gymnasium will be quite full. And then we'll be having these demonstrations with that. So then we are also going to have the tool swap in the parking lot as before, and we're going to have the tool store. So if you bought a new plane and you don't know what to do with your old plane, you can bring it to the tool store and put a price on it and see if it'll sell. Or if you got a whole bunch of stuff, you can bring your pickup load and park in the parking lot and sell it yourself. But the tool store is a nice way to do that for small quantities. Yeah.
In the tool store, there is no commission, right?
There is no commission in the tool store. That's right.
What time?
It's September 24th from 9 to 3. If you're going to participate in the tool store, it'd be nice if you got there a little bit earlier. Just
Like 8?
yeah, like 8. So and then also on the talks, we're going to have Mark Dijinsky. He specializes in woodworking jigs. He's got a number of patents in the area. I believe he worked with Craig, as in the pocket hole company. So he'll be giving a talk. And we're going to have a food truck there, and we're going to have good donuts in the morning and coffee. Just all around good time for fellowship and for checking out the local sponsors and etc. So we do need volunteers as usual. And so I have this sheet. It's essentially two categories. One is the helping us set up and tear down, and then the other would be running this tool store. You could just put in a couple hours if you're willing. I'll pass this around. Any questions about the Woodworkers Expo? A bigger event this year. We're excited about it. Next year, we're penciled in to be at Canterbury Park. So, okay. Thank you, Richard.
All right, the next event after our expo is going to be the fall seminar. This year, the fall seminar is going to be presenting a guy by the name of Chuck Bender. Now, Chuck has got a woodworking school called the Acantha School of Woodworking. And he's got a whole bunch of stuff. He does a lot like Tony. Now, as a matter of fact, Tony has won the Cartouche Award from the Periods Furniture Makers. And Chuck Bender has also won it. So he is going to be demonstrating, not carving like this, but he is going to be demonstrating how to make a chair. It's a Federal's chair that is very plain, but very nice looking. Personally, I'm very interested because I think I'd like to make some myself. Okay, that's the first weekend in November. Now, after that, we're looking at Northern Woods. Charlie, you want to talk about that?
Well, when you say after that, you mean next year.
Yes, but it is after that.
Yeah, when Richard says after that, I mean, we have the expo in September and then November, so there'll be a meeting in October, so they're not like after that. And the Northern Woods will be next April. So it's after that, but like Christmas is after that too. Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say right now is we do have the mall scheduled already. We've already secured the space for the show next year. It's going to be the last full weekend in April. I don't recall the dates off the top of my head, but there's plenty of time to get that. But I guess the only really important thing I would like to say is start working on your projects, you know, get something ready. If you're twice as fast as I am, it's going to take you a long time. So hope to see you there.
Okay, that takes care of the events coming up. Next, I know we've got some new people here. You want to raise your hands, please? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 new people. Okay, if you would, please just stand up, give us your name, and tell us a little bit about how you found out about the guild. Okay.
Matthew Foster. I recently just got a cabinetry job and I've kind of worked with wood my whole life and kind of interested in learning the finer side of things. So learned from a coworker that there's a guild and you get discounts on things.
Yeah.
And there's meetings and little cool stuff that I'm here.
Good. Good.
Hi, Brian Sophia. It's my first meeting. I was at the, much like this gentleman, I was at the first show earlier this year. I'm interested in the guild. Recently retired and spending a whole lot of time in my shop, carving away, trying to figure this stuff out. And learn from a bunch of experts. Glad to be here. Thank you. Good.
Okay. And one more, yeah, you.
Learned about it from the show.
Okay.
Pretty new.
Oh, good. Okay, welcome to all of you. Okay, now, our next thing is we're going to be having a tool giveaway. So get your tickets out and we're going to take a look at the numbers on it. Mike, we're going to do the tool price. Okay, so what we're going to do is we give away tools. I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with just a small amount of glue. So you've got one of a tight bond 3 and one of a tight bond 2. And for those of you on the Zoom, too bad. Okay. You must be present to win, right?
027.
027. There you go.
Right.
Come on up and get this glue.
You hold the bag and I'll dig.
Oh, okay, go ahead. All right.
020.
Okay, that's Tony's wife. You can use all that glue, can't you, Tony? Okay, next is a, what we call a safety pull saw. We call it this because when we had the double-sided one, Ed won it, and first thing he did was he reached over the top and did a nice slice through his hand. So this is a safety one.
015.
George, now, try not to cut yourself.
I'm good at that.
For your safety, we have an RZ mask.
Mask. 021.
Okay, center finger.
4-inch center gauge. 018.
Bunch of drill bits.
50-piece mini drill bit set. 022.
New guys win, I'll tell you.
That's the way we like it. What we
Okay,
got next?
next is plug cutters, set of plug cutters.
006.
Okay. Rasp. Okay, well,
So if you want to redo it.
well, your wife is enjoying the flavor. She says they're her favorite flavor. Okay,
Crescent Nicholson rasp.
okay, if you want to give it away, that's fine. We'll redraw it. Okay,
025.
okay, Jim Riddell. Okay, then we have a,
Oh, the Wixie digital angle gauge. 023.
okay, now we're, Tony says that he doesn't need this because he's got a whole bunch of that. So we're going to redraw for that.
003. There you go.
Okay, perfect. That's it.
You want these in the bag?
Yeah, I'll throw a bag later. Okay, now I turn it over to Mike Johnson and the main event.
Actually, Dan Warren's gonna come up and introduce Tony and should be on. Cool.
Suppose I'm over here, aren't
I muted you.
I? So you.
From the Zoom group, I'd like to ask you to mute everybody on. the
Hello,
Zoom
hello.
call.
Hello, everyone. I hope this is coming through. Tony Kubalak went to 3 different colleges in 10 years in Wisconsin and has math and mechanical engineering degrees, which got him a job as a software engineer. He had 0 woodworking experience until age 25 when he took an open woodshop class offered at a local high school. Since then, he has taken instruction from world-class carvers to hone his craft. His focus is on building museum-quality, faithful reproductions, capturing the charm and spirit of 18th century American masterpieces. He has a website where he offers instructional books that are easy to follow for beginners, but also detailed enough to achieve high quality. Tony?
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, all right, so I got the, press it enough times, it'll end up in the right spot. Okay, I'm gonna do a short, he basically gave you my biography, so I'll go through this a little quicker. I'm a mathematician and mechanical engineer by education, software engineer by trade. I got laid off in in 2001, and I was off for I got laid off a week before 9/11. And a lot of things went bad at that time. Jobs for software guys was one of them, because that was about the same time that dot-com bubble burst. And for every job, there was four guys standing in line. So I got laid off, and I was actually glad, because I didn't like the job I had, and I was just starting to get into building this kind of stuff. So I secretly said, hey, this is great. And so I was off for 9 years. Went back in 2010, and I'm still now working today. As Dan said, I didn't do any woodworking till age 25 other than building some campfires. I was living out in California for a short time, and I took a open shop class at this local high school. And I made a bed frame that I guess you'd sort of call mission style. I looked at, I sort of liked it. I looked at it, I think I understand how to do that. So I bought some wood, go to the shop, and the back was basically a bunch of different boards, and they were offset like by half of the thickness. So that you can imagine sort of like a little bit of a rabbet joint that interlocks. And so you've got one board that's in this plane, and then the other one's back about a quarter of an inch, and then they just rotate, or they alternate. And so I cut all those, and then I put them together, and it turns out it was taller on one side than on the other. And so I asked the instructor, hey, what's up with this? And he says, well, did you square up your wood? And I go, square your wood? What's that? I bought it, I got it from the store. I figured it was square, but I didn't even know that was a term. So that's how much I knew or didn't know. But I got the thing together, and actually still in use today in the house. And I took a carving class from a guy named Ian Agrell, who was a British trained carver. And he's actually, and I don't know what the British system is, but when they designate you as a master carver, it's an achievement. Here we use the word master to describe a lot of different things. For these guys, it's a real designation, and this guy is in that group. And that didn't help me a lot for this. I took a 2-week course with him, and I came back and didn't have a lot to show for it. And it wasn't all that helpful. So that I continued to do what I do. And it wasn't building this stuff. It was building other things. And so then I took this unplugged workshop from Tom Casper, and I learned a few hand tool skills from him, learned how to cut dovetails. And I built a few pieces that were in this flavor, but had none of the embellishments because I didn't know how to do them. But then in '99, I took a class with this guy named Gene Landon out in an old mill cabinet shop in York, Pennsylvania. And that's when my woodworking world changed. He had built reproductions for decades. And I didn't even know that was a thing when I went out there. I took a chair class because I liked the chair. And I remember it was 2 days, and then you come back for a week. And when I got done with the week class, so the course was done, and I said to myself, there's no way I can build this chair. I can complete it. I didn't have the skills, but I was happier than you can imagine, because I could see if I keep at this, I'll probably be able to get there. And so I took classes from him from '99 to 2011. And I'll just show a couple of the pieces that I've done, and then we'll get into this one. Here's a clock that I made. This is actually the piece I like the most of everything I've made. And it's because of this top. I go by this thing every time I walk up my stairs, and there's a lot of times I look at it and go, damn, that's really nice. Because it is. There's some more of the details. Yeah, if you guys got any questions, just ask. Typically, if people ask questions, I do better than just monologue. But I can do that too if I have to. So now here's the piece that we're going to do more in depth on tonight. This is a copy of an original that is actually just downtown at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. I saw it there probably between 15 and 20 years ago now. And the carving on it is very eye-catching. It's some of the best carving I've ever seen. And I looked at that thing and go, wow, that's impressive. And so after I'd seen it the first time, and I got better at this stuff, I actually thought maybe I can make that thing. And so I called up the museum curator and, well, with some trepidation, asking him, can I come down and measure that piece and take some photographs? And I was nervous because other people had told me that a lot of times these museum guys, they don't want to talk to you. This guy was just the opposite. He said, no, we'd love for you to come down. That's part of our charter, is to be here as a service to serious students. I said, you don't know how refreshing that is to hear. And so I went down there, took some pictures, some measurements, and then went home and started to draw some plans up from it. And I was pretty hot on that for a while, but I was drawing with pencil and paper at that time. And I got a decent sketch of the front facade. But then, as things do, it got put on the back burner for probably a dozen years. And then I resurrected it in probably about 15 and started to build it seriously. My skills were better at that time too. So this is you can actually see the real one there. And these pictures are nice, but they don't hold a candle to the real one. And I was talking with a couple of these guys earlier. I don't have a problem pointing out flaws, because the follow-up question always is, well, do you think it matters? And here's one. Look at the, I don't have a pointer here. Well, here we go, I can point. Look at this part right here. I don't know if you can see that little hand. And then look at the one over here. They're different. The one on the right is better and much more like the original. I don't actually know what happened on the left. Something happened and I decided, well, it looks like I got to do this. Because at that point, I wasn't going to do the whole thing over. And so it's like, well, that's the way it is. And I don't know, I don't know if anybody noticed that other until I pointed it out. But even if you notice it, it's like, well, does it matter?
So, Tony?
Yeah.
So you said, if you see the original and you compare it to something like that, it really stands up. What is that? Just sharpness of detail, or?
Okay, no, wait a minute. What stands out as different?
You said, it sounded like you were saying that, or how closely does this match the original?
As close as I can. This is a screw up. I mean, that's what that is.
No, it's like, but it's the same level of detail.
Oh, yeah. I mean, truth be told, the original did not make this mistake. It's got one that looks a lot like the one on the right. But I don't know if I have a picture of the original. No, I guess I don't. This part right here on the original, these little fronds that hang down here and hang down here are actually gone. And that's sort of typical of some of these older pieces. Parts break and they go missing over time. But you can tell there was something there because there's witness marks where it looks like, well, there was something there. And so I put them back when I did this. In detail at this side and that side, they're a little different. But again, that's typical. And if you go and look at originals and you go up close and you look at a right leg and a left leg, you'll go, oh, well, that's different. How come that leaf's not over there? And I can only speculate. Maybe the guy broke something off and go, well, I guess we'll dispense with that one or we'll do something different. But it's sort of like in nature, things don't have to be exact to still look good. And so I guess that's one of the takeaways I'd hope somebody would, so that if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. And I make mistakes all the time. And very seldom do I take a piece and go, well, I got to toss that because I'm going to do it again. Because I'm not going to have, this part would have probably been one of the last things I maybe did. And I'm not going to toss all of this just because of that, as long as I can do something that is reasonable. And quite honestly, if I couldn't have done that, I wouldn't have been afraid to break it off here, break it off there, stick another piece of wood in there and do it again. Yeah.
I'm gonna have you speak on the microphone so people on Zoom can hear.
So when you hadn't made that mistake, or when you want to change that one piece on the vine, are you carving that separate from the whole piece, or do you apply the overlay to the background and then carve it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's applied. So I work with it. I work with it as a separate piece.
You carve it after you apply it?
No, before. So that would be the good news, is if I screwed it up to the point of irreparability, I'm technically challenged today. I can't even get the shrink wrap off. But that's what you work with for most of it. But it's pretty thin. And so it breaks. And this one, the real one broke. But I glued it back together and moved on. And so no, you'll carve most of this. Actually, probably as much. In this case, you can probably carve all of it. And the reason you can is because when you integrate it into the whole, all that integration is just on this board. Sometimes this might be a little more, it'll be altered when it gets on the board. And so you'd maybe stay away from that area until you actually get it attached. But I would not want to carve it on here because the odds of me messing up my background are very high. And push comes to shove, if I do, I say, screw this up irreparably, it's just, because it's not a lot of wood. Whereas if I mess this whole thing up, especially imagine if you'd carved the center thing and now you muck this up and you go, well, I got to toss the whole thing. That would, I'd work very hard to avoid that. Yeah. Yeah.
When you start a carving like this, for example, like once you've drawn it out, do you start in the middle? Do you start at the left and go right? Like what?
Yes.
Go up to down, all of it?
I look at it and go, well, what looks like something I can do? And what is that? That depends on the day. So it doesn't matter where you start. On something like this, yeah, I'd probably start on one of these ends, like do a little bit here, and then I'll do I don't like using the word never, but almost never would I work on one thing just to completion. I'll do a little bit here and do a little bit more over here, because as they come together, one's going to probably influence the other. And so I sort of want to bring them together sort of side by side, sort of inch up on them, because the chances of me making a big mistake then go down. Because if I do one to completion and I'm wrong, well, I'm going to have a harder time to recover.
Tony, how do you hold it still so you can work on it? Do you glue it to something or tape it or?
This particular one, I have a little, it's not a bench. It's basically a 2x6 with a 2x4 that I stick in a vise. And so I basically have a little 2x6 that stands up about this high. Part of the reason is if I'm down like this, I'm going to stay down like that for a long time. But then I'll just take a pinch clamp And because that 2x6, I can get access to the whole thing because it's not very wide. And so I'll just, well, so here's my 2x6. Not really, but pretend. And so there's my bench top. So I'll just pinch clamp it here and pinch clamp it here and carve. I have used double stick tape sometimes where I'll get a sacrificial piece that I'll tape it to, and then I can clamp that. The downside of that is the double stick tape is actually too good sometimes. And you can break this thing taking it off. And so I actually like better if I can just pinch clamp it. Now I just release the clamps and I'm done. I don't have to futz with, because there's been times when when I put tape on it, I'll cut little bits of tape and put it in 3 or 4 spots. And then I'll put it in a vise and really crank on it so that it sticks. And there's been times that wasn't a great idea because it'll break when it comes on. Yeah.
I have questions about this species of the wood that you're using.
Yep.
And how did it match up with the original that you looked at the museum? And do you consider the grain and how tough it is to work in your carvings? That whole kind of scenario.
Well, this is mahogany, and the original is the same.
Okay.
And so I try to use the same wood that the original is. I wouldn't be a slave to it necessarily. I mean, I've made mahogany reproductions of walnut pieces. I don't think I've made a walnut reproduction of a mahogany piece. Could, I mean, it wouldn't, there's nothing wrong with, well, the mahogany carves a lot nicer. I mean, walnut is it'll hold the carving nicely. It's just more work. And well, the other part of that was, do I worry about the grain? On a carved piece, straight grain's better. But I don't worry about that so much. I know a lot of people, they really like the grain enhance. For me, I think it all looks nice. And I actually don't want to have to carve in a knot because it's going to be a lot harder. And more than that, aesthetically, the grain now competes with the carving. And I don't know that a lot's to be gained from that. Yeah.
On the interior of that carving, you have some areas that go all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
On a piece that thin, did you cut that with a scroll saw before, or did you just let the gouges and take it down to the background?
No. So this is what it looks like before you start. So it's just a blank. And yeah, I scroll this out. I scroll the insides. I probably bandsaw the outsides because I don't know if we've ever used a scroll saw. If you don't keep constant pressure down, the thing will hop up on you. That's happened to me more times than I want to count. And each time my heart rate goes up probably doubly as high. And then you can break it too. And so I don't have that problem with the bandsaw. But so no, you cut out the things on the saw, because if you were to try to do that carving it, I don't think you get nearly as nice a line. And you're really gonna have to put a lot of pressure on the wood. And so you're gonna, chances of breaking it, I think, go up quite a bit too. I don't know if you guys want to pass some of this stuff around. I mean, it's not. I'm not opposed to that. It's just. So this drawer front, this is one of the highlight features, I think, of this piece. Oh, and so the drawer, the center part is carved from the solid. Which order you do them in doesn't matter. Shows a little bit more Yeah, no, I've got to look, see if I can tell. Either Ball and Ball or Horton. I think might have been Horton. So when I bought the hardware, there's a lot of firsts on this for me. And the hardware is one of them, in that when I bought it, it was shiny brass. And I put that on there and I thought it looked awful. It was too new for what I was trying to do. And so I tried to figure out how to tarnish it. And the internet being what it was, you look up stuff, and I tried some of it. They said, put it in vinegar. I put it in vinegar, and it didn't do anything. So one thing I read said, heat up, how did it go? Heat up vinegar to almost boiling, and then put a little peroxide in. And so I go, okay, I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going to blow up, is it? I mean, I'm not a chemist. So, but when you talk about heating and putting something together, I go, well, I'm not, especially when I don't know what I'm doing. But when I did that, and then I put the metal in there, you could see it sizzle and it changed color before your eyes. So I go, hey, that's cool. And so then I got that sort of green. It did exactly what I wanted. It took all the shininess off and it put different colors into it. So I go, hey, that little bit of alchemy worked.
Do you have a recipe for that? Is there a ratio?
No, if there is, I don't know what it is. I took a volume of vinegar that looked like it would be sufficient, that doesn't have to be a lot, because I think I did like a nail first, because in case it would do something I didn't want it to do. But then I go, hey, no, this is okay. And so then I just put it in there, and it only had to sit in there for like 10 seconds.
Did you do it on the kitchen stove?
No, I put the vinegar in the microwave for like 60 seconds.
How much peroxide you put in the vinegar? So like
I just poured a little bit in. Wasn't much.
a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And some chemist could tell you what happened, but that's not me. But it worked. It did that. Pardon me? What's the stuff you get at the drugstore? Yeah, it was nothing fancy. And the only reason I did that is because Mr. Google told me to. He knows a lot. Yeah.
There is, just as a point of information, there's tons of references to patination, which is doing weird things with weird chemicals to metal and stuff out there in the woodworking nether someplace. And I do that with my restorations, because I frequently need to use new screws because I can't get the right old ones.
Yep.
Man, they're in the vinegar and peroxide jar all the time.
So you use the vinegar and peroxide.
Yeah.
It was the peroxide that made it work, though.
Yes.
That was my experience.
And I don't measure either, guys. So,
Yeah. I don't think you need a lot.
but there are references on the patination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's where I found it. I mean, I got there, and to talk about, so you can't see this, and I don't know if this piece doesn't have a lot of it. Maybe it doesn't have any of it. But when I use screws for things, I always try to get slotted screws. You got to go out of your way to find those now. You can't go down to Home Depot and get slotted screws. Okay, well, I got them from Fastenal because they could order it, and then to get the coating off, because I want to rust them up. I found if I burn them, I burn the coating off, then I can throw them in water and they'll rust, and and so that works out pretty good. But it's a small point, but those are the kind of details that I get a bit of a chuckle out of. So the bottom skirt, that's carved from the solid. I have a sample here. I did all these sample ones. I did a presentation on this piece for another group a few years ago, and they actually wanted to, quote, make the piece in a weekend. I go, well, okay. And so I did these as samples for that class or presentation. And when I had this in the show a few years ago, David Lane, some of you guys probably know him. He came up to me and said, how did you get all of this off from here? Because it's raised up here. And I said, I cheated. I said, I didn't take it all off. All I took off was a little bit around here. Now you can't, well, here it's like this. Imagine that this is much taller, right? So you dive in right near it, but then you feather it out. And so up at the top here is full thickness. And so it's just an illusion that the background is down all the way. And he was very surprised that that was the case. And I have a picture, I have some pictures probably in the other presentation that is completely on this piece that shows, because the wood I was using had been sitting around for so long, it was highly oxidized, so that when you carved around it, the color difference was extreme, and so you could see it. But in this particular case, it showed the how it's not taken off the whole way. It's just taken off near it. So this is just some more of the detail. And the knee carving on this, when I saw it on the original, it was just, wow, for this kind of stuff, that example, it really doesn't get any better. And I've never seen anything that's better than that. Not to my eye. Well, here's another, for my money, highlight of this piece are these quarter columns. And I'll pass these around. But this is somewhat unusual. Typically, there would be just a fluted column here. Having the carving is a step up or a couple of steps up. This is 3 pieces. There is a capital, or a top, a base, and then the field in the middle. And so here's a sample of it being carved. And me being the frugal individual that I am, some people have other words for that. Because this is not going to be seen, I don't have a problem making a composite like this. And so I can take a piece of scrap wood. And that's another thing I actually like to do, is find scrap wood that I can make. Some other reason I don't get rid of very many things. So this piece of wood here is probably a 1/2 inch thick, the mahogany. And so that, I think, hey, that's cool.
Do you use any sandpaper at all on this?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The carving's not as much because it's sort of hard to.
Take
I'll.
the top areas off so that you don't have a little flat on top of what's supposed.
Oh no, I try to get rid of the facets. And if sandpaper is the thing that works, I sleep fine at night using it. I'll use scrapers a lot. I've got a set of like these bullnose scrapers. So it's you can imagine it's got a radius on top. And then there's different widths. And some of them are real small, like maybe a 1/4 inch or even smaller than that, up to a 1/2 inch or a little bigger. And so then I can get into a lot of spots and scrape off the facets. Because no, I try to get rid of as many facets. Then I also use these little files called Rifflers. So they all got a little bend in them. And you can get a set of them at Woodcraft. They used to be like $10 or $20.
It seemed like they were awful coarse, and I said, somebody's got to sell better ones than this.
Well, there's also a set of Riffler Rasps, and those guys are coarse. But no, these are really fine cut files. And I don't know what they are now. They're maybe $30, but they're just little bitty things, but you can get into tight spots, and they do have it is a file, so metal against wood, and metal is going to win pretty much every time. And so I can clean up nicely with that. Because one of the things I also try to do is get the background to be as smooth as I can, because I think that makes the carving look better. Is if you can imagine, if the background was a little less than smooth, that would compete, because you'd see all these different facets and the light would bounce off it in different ways and it would be distracting. So I work reasonably hard to try to get the background to be as smooth as I can.
Where are you using the carve all this stuff?
Traditional carving tools. Well, I use the Swiss ones. That's just, I settled on those a long time ago because I like them. I understand their numbering system. And they were reasonably readily available. And that's the only ones I buy now. I don't need to buy any more tools. Sometimes I want to, but I don't need to. But yeah, no, these are all traditional cards. So I make this more or less the same way the guy would have made it way back when. And I would argue people today, and I got to be careful how I say this. When this was made back in the day, several people would have worked on it. The master carver would not have done all the grunt work and the joinery and build the drawers and that. Somebody else would have done that. And somebody else would have done the finishing. Whereas today, the craftsman does it all. And so you go, well, okay. So for good or bad, I did it all. And those guys back then didn't. Whatever that's worth. This has got another little detail that is somewhat unique, this Greek key. I used to call it a dental molding, but I was corrected. I guess it's do I call it? What do I call it? Oh, I call it dental here. I have not updated this. But I guess a Greek key is the proper thing. And then I'm going to probably butcher this word, guilloche, the French word. It doesn't sound the way it's spelt. Is carved from the solid. And then the molding underneath it is applied, as is that Greek key. Just shows the back. Oh, now these are some chairs. So this is more of my portfolio. And we can do a little bit of this, or I can go into more detail on this piece. Yep. Okay, so that's, I got to do a switch here. Let's see, what do I have to do here? Let's get rid of that, and then we will do.
So while we're waiting for Tony, make sure you're raising your hand if you have a question, so I can come up with the microphone. We get to be pretty annoying for the.
Okay, so this is just an introduction. You saw that before. That's the mine and the other guys. Drawer, we just talked about that for a little while. So a lot of these are the same. And so this is just an overview of how all the pieces, so that's why I'm flying through this, because we just saw these. But so now here's more of the case construction. And so what you see on the right is I've taken these in SketchUp in the last handful of years, and I actually really like it, to the point that making the SketchUp model is, for me, is sort of fun on its own. And you know, my SketchUp skills are less than great because you don't see any ball and claw feet on that. You just see blocks of, because I don't know how to do the ball and claw foot yet. One day, maybe. But the real value in the model is it forces me to build a piece more or less in my head before I go to the wood. And then I can get drawings out of the model that will help with the real thing.
Hey, Tony, what version of SketchUp do you use? Do you use the free or did you purchase one?
I started out with the free. I bought the professional one because I did a book on this. I mean, there's a book there that describes how to do this in as much detail as I know how to do. And the requirement or the recommendation was for SketchUp, if you use it for anything commercial, you're supposed to pay for it. So I tried to honor that and bought the professional one. And I got one of the last copies of the desktop version. Now I think they just sell it as subscription, which for my money, the subscription model is only good for the guys selling the subscription. It's because I don't need probably 90% of what it can do. And so the free version does that, but I paid for it because of if you're going to sell it in any form, that's what you should do. So I did that.
I don't think you can draw. Can you draw the compound curves in the free version?
You can do, yeah.
Can you?
What you don't get, the professional version comes with another program called Layout, which takes a model and it's a better presentation. And the dimensioning, I think, is better. Although some people use the native dimensioning in SketchUp. I've done that. I don't think it's quite as nice as the Layout. And you get that with the professional version. And you don't even have access to that with the free. But if it hadn't have been for the book, I'd be sitting with the free one right now. So this is how it starts out. It's just a bunch of blocks. And so I like to do the joints while everything is still square because I have reference surfaces and I can measure off of things and I can put it on the bench and it's not going to roll around and a whole bunch of stuff. So that's the way it starts out. And so all my joints are cut and fitted together. All of it's mahogany except for the back, which is pine. That I'm pretty sure on the original it was pine probably. So here now we're back to the SketchUp model. Another thing I like about it is I can get a lot of nice images out of it that if I was to try to draw this, I'd still be home doing it. I've seen blown up drawings for years and people used to do it just by hand. And I always thought, hey, those are really cool. But to me, it was a skill I didn't have the patience to try to draw that. If I had to draw that by hand, it'd never get done. But with this model, I can just take I make the pieces, put them together, and then take them apart a little bit and get this view. And so a couple of things that, well, here it says the gray stuff is mahogany, so that's the primary wood. The gold is the secondary wood, so that's the back and the drawer supports and guides. And the red stuff are my additions. And what those additions are, they do a couple of things. One, I put some bars in the top. Maybe I can just point here. I put these bars in the top so that I can now screw up from underneath to attach the top. The original probably would have had glue blocks in there. But I don't pay a lot of attention to wood movement. Like this, I mean, the side here, this is a mortise and tenon joint with cross grain. I mean, this is going horizontal and here it's going vertical. I don't worry about it. If it cracks, it cracks. But on the top, that's tempting the wood movement gods a little bit. And so I don't do that if I don't have to. And I like this idea of screwing it on because I can take it off if I need to at some point. I probably never will, but that's my rationale. And so I had to add these because those are not on the original. And then another thing I do is on this central, what happened there? The central drawer in front, this little red guy right here, I call that a kicker. If I don't have that, when I pull this drawer out, it's going to want to go down at a pretty pronounced angle. So this bar prevents that from happening. And then I did the same for the upper drawer because that would have the same problem. So that's what my little additions were for. So now the sides are tenon into the legs, and there's a little haunch on the tenon. So it's a full tenon that's a 1/4 inch deep all the way through, and that just keeps things aligned. This is a pretty wide board, and so if you can keep it aligned the whole way, you're probably a little better off. Here's what the leg looks like. And this leg is 1 block of wood except for these knee blocks. Those are applied. But from here up to here is 1 chunk with this piece here cut out to accept the 1/4 column. And that's removed. There's no clever way to remove that. You just have to more or less carve it out. And the reason that there's not much you can do with it, there's a top piece here and there's a bottom here. So I don't know what kind of tools you could get in there to really do anything. I do take a saw and cut at a 45-degree right up the top at the bottom. And so then when you carve into it, it just falls away. But other than that, it's mostly just with chisels and gouges. I suppose you could use a router. I don't, and actually wouldn't want to be around when somebody did. But so here's the front face frame, or the lower part. It's 4 pieces, mortise and tenon. This just shows detail of the vertical stiles that are the central drawer. Well, they're those central pieces that flank the middle drawer. Oh, and then there's this little tenon or little mortise on the backside. That's going to hold one of the drawer guides. We don't want to go too far on that. This thing right here, there's a little tenon on this, about a 1/4 inch, that goes into here. Just for alignment, it's not for structural. And so in SketchUp, I can do all that stuff, get all that mapped out, and I don't have to go onto the piece and then find out, oh, you did it wrong. I mean, that doesn't mean I can have 1,000 drawings and still do it wrong. And I have examples that demonstrate that. So, I mean, you've probably heard the measure twice, cut once. Yeah, it doesn't work. Not all the time. I can measure 12 times and I can still do it wrong. You ever use the ruler upside down? Mark on the wrong side of the number and it's 1/8 of an inch too short? Yeah. A few words happen when I do that too. She can hear them upstairs. Here's the back. It's mainly just mortise and tenon into the 2 legs, but then these other little cutouts are to accommodate the drawer guides And then these little dovetails at the top are for my extra pieces that hold the top. Here's one of the central drawer guides. This is a built-up piece. There's 3 pieces. So this one here is for a side drawer. This keeps it from going left to right. And this supports it. This is what it runs on. And then the same for the middle drawer, which is a little bit taller. I don't know what I keep hitting to have for that to happen. But I hit something. And then the cutout in the back that we just saw on the previous slide matches this, those tenons. Now a little more how you put them together. On the guides that are on the sides, you can nail them right to the leg. So I don't have to cut mortises to support them the way I do the stuff in the middle, because I have no other way to support it. On the sides, I just nail them into the legs. And that's the way they did it on the original. It's what a drawer looks like. This is typical of how I make all the drawers. The dovetails around, half blinds in the front, full in the back. Then the bottom slides in from the back into the front. And there's a little rabbet in the side to support it. And then there's a little rabbet in the front. And then notice the back is a little shorter, not as tall, because this goes in underneath it. And then you nail up from the bottom. Okay, so now there's some.
So for your drawer construction, you're using a solid for the bottom?
Yep, I use solid wood everywhere. Yeah, it's just a piece of pine, probably. Well, it can be the piece is probably typically about a 1/2 inch thick, but then you shave down the 2 sides in the front to match the groove. And so it's probably only like 3/16 right at the edge here, but it's a 1/2 inch chunk of wood. So it's substantial enough. I mean, you can. You'll meet in the middle somewhere. But that's typically the way I make every drawer. So the way I put this together is a series of sub-assemblies. And so here's one of them. And it's that lower face frame. It's that we saw the 4 pieces before. So I'd glue that up, and then I would glue this in as a unit, but I would get this together first. And so once I have that, now you can make the front sub-assembly. Because if you think of this piece as being one piece now, so we've got 3 or 4 components that come together, 2 rails, and then the 2 legs. And then the back is 3 pieces of wood, 2 legs and a back. So that's easier than the front. And so, not to be too facetious, but so this is, think of it, there's four things. You got a front face, a back face, and 2 sides. So how hard can it be? Now things start to get a little dicey when you're putting this together. And so here's a case fully assembled. And so what I do is I glue it up in sections. Let's see. Oh, no, I guess I don't have it here specifically. But what I would do is, So I've got the front piece, I've got the back piece, and now I've got to attach the sides. And so what I would do is, let's say I would glue the front on both sides here. I might only glue one, put glue in here, and then I would clamp the whole thing together with, say, these other three not even glued. Because I want to concentrate, because I use hide glue, so I have somewhat limited time, open time. And so the fewer things I have to try to juggle, the better. But I want to, when I clamp this together, I want to have the whole thing together to have a chance of keeping it square. And I say have a chance because I was telling a couple of guys, this is, again, showing all the warts. That thing was square when I dry fitted it. When I glued it up, it was out of square. And so I had to gouge out some of the back leg in here on the inside, because this drawer was sitting, well, it was not going flush because the thing wasn't square. And that was a source of irritation too. But at that point it was glued up. What am I going to do? I mean, I sweated that one a little bit, but then I recognized that it wasn't so bad that if I trimmed a little bit off on the inside there, the drawer would fit flush and nobody would know the difference unless I tell them. So which I just did. And now it's on the internet, so everybody will know forever. But that's
Since
okay.
you're using hide glue, have you ever tried reversing it?
I have, and that's one of those things that theoretically it works, and practically it works, but it's not quite as, it doesn't come apart quite as easy as the theory sounds. What I found works the best is if I heat it up, and so if it's small enough, I'll put it in the oven. Yeah, because the glue will reconstitute with water or heat. But if you can't get water in there, you're sort of left to heat. And I don't have a big enough oven to put that thing in. And so it's hot hide glue. You get a granules and then you mix up with a little bit of water and then heat it up. I love it. I never used it before I started working with Gene, because that's what he used all the time. And I've come to really like it because of the reversibility, because there has been times when it's small enough I can take it apart. And if it hasn't completely dried, it'll come apart easier. If it's fully dried, you got to get it warm, because if the joint is nice and tight and you can't get any water in there, I don't know, you're stuck with heat. But if the piece is small, you can do that. You can also take a heat gun, but that's got its own problems because you can ignite the wood or scorch it in a way. So those things scare me because they're really freaking hot. And if I use like a curler or like a hair dryer, I'm not going to live long enough probably to heat it up enough.
Do you know what temperature it needs to get to?
Think about 140 degrees. But if you can put it in the oven, that actually works great. And then because once you get it apart a little bit, now a little bit of water in there, and then you just clean it up, and it's just like you're starting from scratch. But this one was, for whatever reason, I decided I can't really do that practically. And so I go, well, we'll hack the back leg. So what are we doing here? Full case assembly. So okay. So more about this. So glue up, say this corner, clamp it all up, let it sit for a little while. You don't have to let the hide glue sit too long before it sets up pretty well. I mean, probably an hour is good enough. Take it apart. Then I would come over here and do this side. And then the same thing. Glue, put it back together, clamp it up. Now, so now you got three pieces. You got the two sides and the front together. But now you're out of options. When you put this back on, you got to put it on all at once. And you've got to put these guides in now too, because there's no way, they don't slide in anywhere. They're mortise and tenon front and back, so they have to go in now. So now you got to be a little bit more of a magician to get all that stuff lined up correctly. And it was probably at this stage that I made my out of square mistake. So then once the case is glued up, now you can put in the rest of the guides that can go in after the fact, like these here where they're just nailed to the sides, same here. And then these extra pieces that I added for.
That's why you use dovetails there. Sliding it from the top. As opposed to a mortise and tenon.
Well, I suppose you could do that, but that,
Didn't you?
no.
Top rail? The top
Oh, yeah, you mean these red things?
Yeah.
Oh, that I did, yeah. But see, I didn't put, if you look at the previous slide, I didn't put those in.
You didn't need to.
I didn't know, I don't need to.
Drop it.
They just drop in. But this one in the middle that supports the central drawer when you open it, that's mortise and tenon front and back. This guy right here. Well, we can't see it. You're still not gonna be able to see it real well, but this guy right here. This is mortised in here and same in the back. Because I want some support for it. I mean, they're only small little things. But so this these have to go in when the back goes on, because, well, it just doesn't work any other way. So there's all the extra, the supports. Oh, so what am I showing here? So now we add the molding and the knee blocks. And the way I did this was I add the top molding first. And that's just nailed on. I glue the corners here together so I can get a nice joint there, but I don't glue it along here. There's a couple of little nails in there. And I don't really glue it in the front. I mean, the grain is running in the same direction. You probably could, but I didn't see any real advantage to that. And it would just be more stuff I'd have to clean up. And so I just would just put it with nails, but I do glue in the corner so that I can get a nice tight joint. And then put on the Greek key. And that's just, well, actually, I think I glued that, at least in the front. Because I know I got a picture in the book here somewhere where I got all these little blocks trying to hold it. Because this is a fragile little piece. And what I don't want is to have it coming up. I don't want it to feel like it's going to pop right off. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple of nails in here. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I did nail it, because I'd probably, that's so small, I can imagine you'd split it. And so I probably did just glue it. I mean, I finished this thing about 5 years ago. And part of the reason I write it down, because I don't remember. I mean, I sort of know, but you add the quarter columns. Okay, so now now the stuff that really makes this thing stand out. We got to do the carving. And so how do you do that? Well, the first thing you got to do is draw the pattern on the leg, which is not quite as simple as you might think, because the surface is anything but flat. So I start out by making a center line, and I just sort of sight it. Turns out your eye is really good at seeing when something is straight or not. And especially if you look at it like at an angle like this. I mean, I can see where the straight line is going to go. Now, can I execute that first time? Maybe yes, maybe no. But that's a good way to be able to sight down this the leg. And so then I'll start from the top a little bit with a pen, looking at the steep angle, and draw a little bit at the bottom or at the top. And then I can see where the center line is on the leg at the bottom, draw a little bit there, and then keep going top to bottom and connect them in the middle. And you get a pretty good line. You can get clever and try to use a ruler. I've done that. But actually just doing it by eye is almost better. Because even with the straight edge, it's just difficult to get it to go in a line that looks good at the end on that curved surface. So I have patterns for this, and I make them out of boxboard, because part of it is that's frugality again. And I have a lot of boxboard. I don't know if it shows. Most of my boxboard are potato chip boxes. And I've got a lot of them. So that tells you I eat a lot of potato chips. But it's actually like it for this template material, because it's rigid enough that it'll hold its shape, but it's also flexible enough that I can bend it around these curved surfaces. But it's flat, so you got this flat template that has to go on this curved surface. And so the template is a guide. It's not, just because you got the template doesn't mean it goes on automagically. So the way I do this is I find what I call landmarks, where I know I want something to be. For example, I know how far is this off the ground. That's a measurement you can take. So I know the bottom of the template's got to come here. Then I know this, how far down is that going to be? And then, so the template is more or less this thing right here. And then I know this has to come over here. And so I get these little tips drawn in. And so the template places those so that they're in the right positions relative to themselves. And then I have to connect them by hand, because the template is never going to match this exactly. And this leg is a little different than that leg, even though they look the same. But there's always going to be little nuanced differences that you have to accommodate for by freehanding. And so then I know, like, this leaf tip is a little bit above the bottom of this. And so those are what I call landmarks, like here and here and here. These are a little easier because well, you've got the outside shape of the knee block that is a landmark too. So this is just showing you putting on a part at a time. So this is, yeah.
So when you first draw what you're going to carve on the leg, do you do your first leg and then make templates from that to use on
No.
the other legs? Or you
No.
do the templates first?
I do the templates first, and that comes from the pictures that I took of the original.
Okay. thanks.
The computer makes a lot of this stuff for me doable. If I didn't have a computer, I would have never written that book. It would be a lot harder for me to get drawings, because with the computer, I can take a photograph, bring it into the well, I use 2 or 3 different programs. And so like the drawing program that I would use, for example, I bring so you try to get a picture that's straight on of so let's say we're going to try to make this template right here, for example. So I have a picture that I've taken at the museum of the leg from as straight on as I can. So then I also have gotten a few measurements that I know, well, how tall is that thing? Like, what's the distance from here to here? And so I have some overall dimensions. And so then I can scale that picture inside the program. And now once I've scaled it to full size, I can trace over it in the drawing program. And then I get line drawings of which you can So that's how I get these things. And so here's the one where the leg one right here. But if it wasn't for the computer drawing program, I'm not that good that I can do that. And so the computer programs really help me in being able to do this kind of work. It's to get these drawings, because I can get these. I can be pretty accurate with that. And then the really cool thing is I can size them continuously, bigger, smaller, move it around a little bit, change the shape a little bit if I have to. It's pretty freaking amazing. So we put this thing on a little bit at a time. And again, you got to put it on a little bit at a time because it's a flat template on a rounded surface. So here's another one. So this shows you like, well, here's a reference area where on the center line, I want the bottom of one of those leaves to hit at that point. So I put a line there, and then you can see. So I have several templates that help put this on, again, because it's a rounded surface and you can't do it with just one. You certainly can't do it with one flat template, but you can get pretty close with having a series of them. So this little one I've got here is, what does this thing look like from the front view? And I think that's on the sheet that's going around. I think all the templates for the leg are on there. Just more of the same. So here, this is a good example of what I'll take from the template. I take the tips of these leaves. I've got this little area where the 2 leaves fold over on each other. And now I'm going to have to connect these with a nice curve, which probably is not on the template because the size is probably a little different. And so these came from the template, and then this connection was me doing a little bit of freehand, because you want to get nice flowing curves. Otherwise, it won't look good. That's just more of the same. So you build this up a bit at a time. You can't do it all at once. It won't work. And I actually take quite a bit of time in drawing this on here, because as I'm doing it, I'm going over, okay, well, I'm somewhat carving it with the pencil. I'm getting my head into what I'm trying to do here. That's one of the things I find, if I stay away from something for a while, you have to having to do the same thing you did the last time you're there all over again, because it's like, well, where was I when I stopped? And so all these chances for going over this, doing the SketchUp model, building it as just a square block thing first, drawing this on here, I'm partially building it in my head, and so I have a much better roadmap in my head when I go to actually put a tool to wood. It's just, again, it's more the same, but as you can see, there's several steps in here, and but on the far right here, you can start to see that I'm starting to get most of the stuff on there. There's a few things that still aren't connected. On the sample, the knee blocks are attached to the leg, and it's debatable. Earlier when I would make a chair, for example, I would not put the knee block on. I put the chair together and then put the knee block on as an afterthought. I did that by design because that's the way I learned. There's other people that will say, well, no, put the knee block on before you connect the leg, because now you can carve it all as one. And they go, yeah, okay, theoretically, I accept that. And I actually tried that on this. The downside is you gotta, when it's in this form, you're going to be moving this around a lot and using it a lot because you got quite a bit of work to do. And I knocked one of the knee blocks off. And so it's like, okay, well, how much ahead was I by putting it on firsthand? And so I probably will do it where I add them afterwards. I know how to do that, and then I don't have to worry about knocking them off. Because when this goes in a clamp, this actually fits in a clamp pretty nicely, because the way I truss it up is I take a bar clamp that's held in another clamp. And so you can imagine the bar clamp sits here and it can pin it here and here. And so these are really sort of free, but you do have to turn it quite a bit to get access. And as I say, I don't remember how I knocked the block off, but I did. And I go, well, I put it back on, so it's not a huge deal, but it sort of negated a little bit the idea of putting it on beforehand. And I think the theory is by putting it on beforehand, I can now carve this as one unit. When I do it my way, I stay away from here. I don't carve right up to the edge until I put the knee block on. And then I have to, the downside of that method is now I have to sculpt this knee block when it's on the piece. And quite honestly, a chair is easier to hold up than this thing is, because you can put it in different. This is pretty unwieldy as a big box. So maybe there's more merit on a case piece like that. Oh, I've done case pieces where I did it after the fact. So the carving on this one is a little more complicated than a lot. So here's a case where part of the carving is up on the rail, part of it's on the knee block, and part of it is on the leg itself. And so all those got to come together, and you're going to have to end up doing a lot of some freehand work in here, because that's the only way. It's hard to get a template in there. I mean, you got a 90-degree angle in here, and it's pretty small. And so you look at landmarks and do the best you can. And still just this particular one is pretty complex. And I think I've counted 5 layers. So you got the button on top, that's 1. That sits on top of a leaf, that's 2. Which sits on top of another leaf, that's 3. Which sits on top of another leaf, that's 4. Which sits on the background is 5. And that sounds complicated, but it's not so much if you think about it right. And so now this shows how you get those levels. Now I didn't do the button up here yet, but the way you do this, again, it's an illusion. So I've drawn this whole thing on here. And so now what do you do? Well, the first thing I would do is set in or cut around this perimeter and then dive into it to take a little bit of the background off around it, which ends up raising this up. And you can even see on here, here's oxidized wood and here's non-oxidized wood. So it's the same technique as over there. It's an illusion. I've just taken a little bit off here and then I blend the background into here. But what your eye sees is this sits on top of that. But I haven't taken hardly any wood. I hardly get the floor dirty. You take so little off. But that's how you get the layers. Because visually the layers look really cool. But there's not a lot of wood that's removed. So I don't know if you want to. Maybe you're getting tired of passing stuff around. I don't know. Just say so if you are. Well, this is just more filling in all the details. These are free-handed in, I'm pretty sure. Here's a template to start. Now here's again another case of I've got part of it at the bottom and I've got part of it at the top, and now I have to connect it. And so that's going to be a little bit of freehand drawing. Okay. Again, anytime you got questions, just ask. So now I sort of stole my own thunder a little bit. Now we're going to start to carve it. And so you cut in around the perimeter and then dive into it and then blend and smooth out the background. And so there I've got one of my layers set. Yeah.
So you're chopping it around with like a flat, straight chisel?
Oh, no. These are gouges of appropriate sweep.
Okay. And you use that same gouge to back out the background?
Probably a flatter one.
Okay. Do you use the V to cut around the drawing?
Sometimes you can. Some people, that's their technique. That's not the way I learned. I learned by stamping in around it, more or less perpendicular to the surface.
Okay.
You get a nice crisp line that way. And I have taken to using a V now, but a lot of times then I'll come back and stamp around it because I can get a crisper edge.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
But this is the sort of the illusion part of it. We haven't taken off a lot and we just blend it, but your eye tells you that it's sitting on top. And I think that's a good way to visualize it in your head, so that, because when you first look at the picture of this, you look at it, well, how the hell you do that? And it's not until, now again, you don't see this stuff on day one. I mean, I've looked at these pictures for decades now. And learning to read the picture is a skill unto itself. Because I remember earlier, I'd look at the picture and foolishly, you convince yourself, I know what to do. And then you go back and you go, no, I don't know what to do. It's like you go in, you're in a class and the guy's up writing on the board, and you go, oh yeah, I understand. And you go home, and I don't know what the hell he said. And so it's sort of the same thing here. But over time, you learn to read the picture. And when you can do that, now it helps. If you can visualize this, you have a much better chance of doing it. I remember when I started, I would make cuts, not because I knew what I was doing, but because the guy I was working with says, do that. I didn't know why I was doing it, but I was doing it because he said so. And then I'd do that and something wouldn't work out and I wouldn't know what did I do wrong? And it's over time that you realize why you make the cut that you do, but you're not, that's a learned skill too. And it comes with repetition. So here's more of, so my strategy for this is to get rid of the background, raise the I call it the carving envelope up from the background. I'm not detailing it yet. That's another thing that people, they want to go to detail too soon. And I used to do that too. And if you don't get the levels right, you're going to be chasing that the rest of the time and it will never look right and you won't know why. And then when you sort of figure out what you have to do, you're going to go, well, I have to erase all the carving that I just did. Because you maybe have it done well, but it's too high. And so you got to get rid of it. I mean, I watched the instructor more than once on a student. He'd be doing something and the guy, he'd say, come on, what's wrong? The guy take the rasp and just go, gone. So don't want to go to detail too soon because you'll, and I do that on my own sometimes. I mean, because it's easy to lose sight of where you're going. See, lowering the background, setting around the line. Yeah, so set in, carve, dive down a little bit to get some depth, and then blend the background to what's around it. It gets a little dicier in here because you're constrained on more on all around, but it's the same concept. And this is where I found skew chisels work nicely. Skewed flat chisels work nicely for getting into corners. I do not know why I keep getting that little menu choice because I really don't want it. And then cleaning up the background, here's where I'll use those rifflers because, well, the thing that's nice about them, they got a little bend in them so I can come in from a steep angle but get into this tight spot. Whereas I can't get at that at a low angle because there's just ridges everywhere. It's more detail. This one's putting in, how do you start to isolate? You know, you think I'd learn? You think, I think I made it bigger. Wow, who knew? So to make this cut, this would be like a number 7. And I just know that. It's not really important. A 7 is a medium sweep, pretty tight. And so cut in around that. And then with a gouge, probably like a number 9, which is a tighter sweep, carve into it to open it up. Well, maybe I'll be better with the mouse. I think it's the trackpad that messes me up. And on the right, you see a little bit more progress has been made. Here, I just dove into the to the C scroll, and here I've got to continue it down the leg. Well, no. Okay, how does it, why did it get, how do I make it minus? I'm doing that now. Well, it used to be that I could use the arrow and it would scroll to the next page. Oh,
Now try the arrow.
wait a while. Okay, let's see if I view. Zoom page display. Single page view, that's what I want. Okay. Well, how come it? Okay, yeah, whatever works. Okay, because I'm on 50 of 113, so there's still quite a few to go. So this, again, this is more of the same. It's, so now I'm doing a little bit of the ruffle here. And if you look at that ruffle, the C scroll has got to be high. So if this has got to be high, that means the guy next to it's got to be a little low. So same technique, set in around the perimeter, dive into it. That gets you the background, but then each one of these little ruffles has got another tighter sweep that's going to dive down deeper. And so we make these scoops and then round over the corners. That's a lot of what this carving is removing some wood and then rounding the corners. And again, I'm being a little facetious, but not that much either. Oh, we were at that one. Okay, so now 49. All right. So now we're getting into some of these tighter spots. Set in around it, dive into it, and then blend the background. Same technique, more the same. Now I got my arrows back. Because when the whole thing fits in there, the arrows will work. Before, so now this is starting to look like something. So we got the ruffle and the frond or the leaf are coming together. Please. Was that me? Why I hit the space bar. Okay. Okay, so now we're doing the same. That first grouping showed the stuff right above the background. Now, the same technique to put a layer on top of a layer. So from this guy's point of view, this is the background. Whereas the real background is to this first layer as this layer is to the one on top of it. So it's the same concept. Set in around it, cut into the base of that stop cut, and then blend. So here you can see the background is sort of nice and smooth. That's the way the sample leg that you've got is, that's the state that it's in. Showing some of the detail, the color of the wood shows. And it's harder, it's easier for me, it's clearer here than it is up there. So here's a quarter columns. Yes, so it shows mine and the original. Yeah, you guys got to be the judge of that. I mean, the one on the left looks pretty dark to me. It's not as dark on my screen, but I think that's just it probably loses quality going through all this equipment. But the quarter column, for my money, is one of the highlights of this piece. And I was particularly pleased with how mine turned out. So here shows it, how it fits into the opening before it's carved. As I mentioned earlier, it's 3 pieces. There's a top, a middle, and a base. Same concept. You have a template. I make the template on the computer from scaled pictures. And again, same techniques. Raise the carved envelope above the background. On this particular, on this quarter column, this is, I don't know if it's dicier, but it's something to keep in mind. When I make the column blank, I know that I want to have, and in this case, let's say it's an inch. It's whatever I want when I look at the picture, how much of the column, what's the recess between here? So that's here. And then I add another 1/8 of an inch, for example. That's what the carving is going to come out of that 1/8 of an inch. And then I take a marking gauge and carry that inch, or that 1/8 of an inch, all the way down to the other side. And what that does for me now is when I'm going to go to the background, that's the line to which that's the bottom of my background. And by doing that, now you get a nice, this surface looks like it's just one continuous surface, which is what you want. And then you also get a nice straight line because I marked it off of a reference surface with a marking gauge. And so this line is straight and parallel to the back. So here's a little bit of progress. Now some detailing, and somebody earlier asked, where do you start? And it doesn't make a lot of difference. So in this case, I started with this center element. One of the things to note when you're looking at this, you can't see it really well from these pictures here, but when you're looking at this with decent light on it, the light shines on here and you can see like a ring that where the light is, it almost looks like a circle, but it's just the high spots. And so I want to maintain that. And so that's what this one. So there, I don't know if you can see that at all. But well, this one especially, I see some high spots there and there, and I don't see them quite as much over there. But the point is, that's not a line. That's just high there. But I've set it up so that those high spots are sort of in a circle, because that's what I see when I look at the original. Thank you. And so that's what this one line is all about, this outer line. That's just going to be my high spot surrounding the central button. I forget what the botanical term is. But that's what that line is for. And so the progression here is I set in around it. Now I'm diving. It's the same thing over and over. Set in, dive in, clean up the background. So the middle picture shows the central button being raised, and the next one shows I'm excavating out to my outer circle, which is going to remain high. And so now at this point, I got to put in a handful of leaves because again, I'm looking at the picture and I see these different leaves. And so I'm demarcating them at this point. Now I'm separating them. So you look at the picture and you just say, well, this one is on top of that. So if this one is on top of that, that means that this is high and the bit right next to it is low. So you cut in around it, dive into it. And now a lot of things happened. So each one of these petals got refined. And they got more refined here. But now we got the button that's still rough because it's still just a circular cylinder. And so we're going to make a dome out of that. And the way you do that is knock off the corner ever so slightly and then round it. And you can use carving tools, and this is where I probably use some carving tools, some of these Riffler files, and maybe a little sandpaper to smooth it out. Now we go to detailing another one of the leaf clusters. And it's just more progress. But so you work on each element at one at a time. And all these little details, I think they do. You get nice visual effects with the light. So there's one of the things I noticed in this. There's a bunch of little holes in various spots, and so I'm putting those in now. And when you put finish on it, well, one of the things I'm doing is on this piece, this is the first piece I quote added age to it in the finish. And I did that by glazing mainly, that and trying to vary the color. But these little holes, when you put the dark glaze on, it remains in there. And so they go very dark, but then light next to it makes it stand out, the lightness stand out that much more. And the light in here doesn't show that, but when you get this in nice bright light, you can see a lot more of that. Side panel. We talked a little bit about this. This is actually probably a little easier than the leg and the quarter column because the surface is flat. So the template can go on there pretty easily. So draw on the template. Oh, here's the picture I was talking about. The one in the upper right-hand corner. Even there you can see it. It's nice and clear here, but you can see the oxidized wood and the non-oxidized. So you can see how it feathers out. Probably only 2 or 3 inches above the very top. Yeah.
You went down, it says 1/32 here, and you had mentioned 1/8 on the quarter columns. How do you figure out how deep to go?
Well, it's a judgment call. One of my takeaways when I looked at the original was that the carvings seemed very shallow to me. One of the things I found out that it's like a 32nd on the perimeter, but inside of that you can go deeper. And so I have a lot more depth. I mean, a lot more. Maybe it'll go to 1/8 of an inch at some place. So it's not, I mean, it's relative. But as long as you stay within that perimeter, you get the feeling of lightness. And to the 1/8 of an inch on the quarter column, that The only part of that eighth that's going to remain are those high spots. Because let's see, this might have started out an eighth of an inch higher. But that's going to get carved down to get some shape to it. So it's not going to be an eighth left. The only part that's really left of the eighth is probably like right in here. And like the top of this button. This light actually shows the darkness in the lines pretty good, I think. And so I need the extra thickness really just for this in here.
Say, Tony?
Yes.
about 5 more minutes.
Okay. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is just more set in, carved down to the base and clean up. So there we're done. Just like Norm Abrams, it's amazing what he can do in a half an hour. So then here's the front. This is another one of the, to say what is the highlight of that piece, there's a few. The drawer front is another one. We've seen that, we've talked about this a little bit. I pointed out the flaws in this. And they added back fronds. So templates again. Showing you how you.
My question, Tony.
Yeah.
For the main center drawer, is there a name to that type of a shell?
Nothing particular that I know of.
Okay, because I just hadn't seen one like that before.
Well, this is sort of typical of shells on drawer fronts like this. And all of these are cut from the solid. One of the interesting parts of this is that central flower it leans in. So that central shell is basically a bowl. And I don't know if here, this probably will show it pretty good. You can see that this flower goes down into the bottom of the bowl. And that's just something I note from by looking at the pictures and looking at the original. But that's what I'm doing at this stage right here. Like I have a depth for how far is that supposed to go down. And then I just bevel it down to that depth. You can see I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can actually see it there where the arrow's pointing. That's how much I've got to take off of that flower from the base down to there to get that sense of that we're going down into the bowl. Same idea as we did on the quarter column. There's a little central button. Excavate that. Separate the leaves. More refinement. Now we got to put in these, there's a couple layers to this shell. There's these, I don't know what you call them, those cutouts that are laying on the bottom of it. They get drawn in here, excavated, and then scooped on the ends and rounded on the, there's convex ones and concave ones. On the upper right is, now that we've, well, there's it's very shallow here. And one of the things there's a little dicey, and I probably got a little closer than I should have. At the bottom here, I don't want to break this bottom line because you'd see that. You'd have a line that had a divot in it. So I got to get some depth here, and I don't have very much room to get it. But I didn't want to break the bottom line. But it's not very deep. So there's the drawer and the applied vine. We've seen this one before. Lines, template, cut them out, scroll saw and bandsaw. So there's my, it looks like this one I actually taped to the board and clamped the board to the bench. So somebody talked about where do you start earlier. One of the places would be to set the levels, figure out which is high and what's low. And so then I cut around this, dive into it. That makes this one sit on top of this. Same thing down here. I note that this sits on top of that. So I have to cut in around that and then dive into it. That we call it. So there's a lot more here. But that's, well, that's all we got time for, I guess, at this point.
All right, Tony, thank you. That was a great presentation. Good job. Everyone, thank you for coming out, and make sure you make it to the Woodworkers Expo coming up in September. Thank you.